The member for Dawson.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. Well, as the member for Goldstein quipped to me during the last speech, that that's the kind of speech that you get when your seat has become reliant on Green votes, and you've become reliant on Green votes to actually get across the line. It's very, very sad, because the bill before us is quite an important bill. This is all about providing a remedy to the plight of tourism operators in the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. And what we just heard is a return to arguments of the past, divisions of the past, not just divisions in this place, but dividing local workers, local industry, local jobs, local farmers from local tourism operators. And it is an argument of the past, an argument that we as a government are leaving behind, because we are on the side of tourism workers and tourism businesses. And this measure, I've got to say, why I'm so passionate about it and so disappointed that the main Labor speaker here and the member for Griffith would come forward with a speech that, and with motions and amendments that are all about politics. I mean, she talks about not politicising the reef. Well, I've got to say that I don't know what that motion and an amendment is and what that speech was if it wasn't politicising the reef. Goodness me. To put in an amendment, a do-nothing amendment like that, to a bill that is about assisting tourism workers and tourism businesses really does beg a belief. And I'm so passionate about this because this change, this relief to tourism operators that goes on to help tourism workers, actually came from my electorate, from the Dawson electorate. It had a lot of support. I didn't see too many people on the other side of the chamber. I didn't see the member for Griffith actually arguing the case for tourism operators at the time. The people who are advocating for that were I and the member for Leichhardt, the member for Herbert, the members for Flynn, the member for Capricornia, member for Wide Bay, all those up and down the coast that encompasses the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park area, where we know how many businesses rely on this great asset and how many workers rely on jobs from that great asset. So I went into bat for tourism operators that were saying we need, as this pandemic rolled out, to waive the reef tax, otherwise known as the Great Barrier Reef Environmental Management Charge. I've got to say that is a tax that sadly has just gone up and up and up and has become a massive impost on tourism operators, and I think that there needs to be quite a distinct look at that going into the future and whether that tax actually continues or not. But for now, what we did initially actually was suspend that tax for the rest of the year. And I was at a meeting where the Environment Minister actually announced this to Whitsunday's tourism operators, and they were that enthralled at the decision that the room burst into applause. That was what this measure would do for the tourism operators. So good, they burst into applause. Actually, as it turned out, a week later, the whole industry pretty much had been shut down because of the pandemic, and so this measure probably wasn't saving them much at all because there were no people going out into the reef. So I went in and fought to have this decision backdated to the 1st of January. And it took a while to get there because it had to be legislated, as we're doing right now. But the day that it happened, I got this letter from the Whitsunday Charter Boat Industry Association, who were the crew that were instrumental in advocating for this, coming to me so that I could advocate for it with all of the information that led to this decision here today. And this shows how grassroots politics actually, businesses, workers, individuals getting involved can actually facilitate major change like what's before here, because this group from Airlie Beach did it. They did it. And what they wrote to myself, to Minister for the Environment, the Minister for Trade and Tourism, the Deputy Prime Minister, and also the member for Leichhardt was this. I'm writing you both personally and on behalf of the Whitsunday Charter Boat Industry Association to offer our sincere and heartfelt thanks for the support you have shown to our industry in what will be long remembered as one of its darkest times. The announcement yesterday of a backdate in the Environmental Management Charge, EMC, waiver to January 1 and the $3 million in further relief for our industry, this will mean could not have come at a more opportune moment. An increasing amount of economic studies are putting the Whitsundays and its marine tourism industry at the top of Australia's list of regions and business sectors severely affected by COVID-19. Even prior to the pandemic, we were still reeling from the impacts of Tropical Cyclone Debbie and a cluster of shark attacks. Notwithstanding this, our region and our industry has continued to comprise over 40% of the $6.3 billion, 64,000 job Great Barrier Reef tourism sector. Our contribution is estimated over $2.8 billion. We carry 1 million passengers per year into the Whitsundays section of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. In short, we are worth saving, and yesterday's announcement demonstrates your clear understanding of that. As you know, operators will only begin to realise benefit from the initial EMC waiver from April the 1st to December 31st, 2020. Once business resumes, without customers, there is no EMC paid, which under these waiver provisions, operators will be able to use as much needed cash flow. She goes on to thank the government for backdating it and listening to the industry in what was needed. And it really is needed because, again, you know, just with what we just heard in the last contribution to this place, there was hardly mention of the plight of tourism businesses. It was all politics. Hardly mention of the plight of tourism businesses. There was old arguments about funding to foundations and old arguments trying to separate one industry from another industry and so on and so on. But what wasn't mentioned was the fact that in the Whitsundays right now, we have 100% of tourism businesses directly impacted by this Wuhan coronavirus pandemic. We have 118 businesses that have actually suspended operations within the Whitsundays. We have over 3,000 jobs lost because of this event in the Whitsundays. We have almost 30,000 room nights that have been cancelled. We have almost 24,000 tours and activities that have been cancelled. We've had a total estimated dollar value of cancellations caused directly by this event and bushfires sitting at around $150 million to a single community. $150 million. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. They are staggering figures, and this is part of the reason why we have built up this COVID-19 Relief and Recovery Fund that has helped to do things like provide this extra environmental management charge relief to tourism operators. It is something that has been very well received, and lest we think that this is just a little kick in the can for the industry, I can tell you it's worth tens of thousands to businesses who are suffering on a number of fronts, not just because they don't have customers walking in the door at the moment, but if I can segue into one area which is impacting on the financial viability of tourism businesses right now, it's the fact that we've got all of these online booking agents that are withholding funds for tours that have been conducted for tourism operators right now. I'm not going to go too in depth into this because the industry is trying to sort it out and doesn't want the issue made bigger than what it is for them to sort out. But the fact is that they are hurting quite badly because we have booking agencies, a lot of them foreign-owned, that are just not handing over the funds for tours that have actually been conducted. So we've got tourism operators that are, again, tens of thousands of dollars out of pocket. So this money that we are providing, this environmental management charge for the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority, handing it back to the operators is a godsend. It really is. It's going to mean the difference between businesses shutting up shop and staying open. It's going to mean the difference between people keeping jobs in the Whitsundays, in Cairns, down at Yeppoon, probably at Gladstone, and in so many other places. It really, really is a godsend. But look, I want to stake my position on a few other things that will assist the tourism industry beyond this. As I said at the start of this, I think that there needs to be a severe review of this environmental management charge going into the future. The whole design of this EMC was about, it started off at $1, mind you, $1 as I understand it, and that dollar that was charged for each night or each time that a tourist went out onto the reef went into a consolidated fund that basically spent money on infrastructure and projects that the industry wanted to see happen. It's really, really gone way away from its original intent. It is now just basically a tax that goes to fill the coffers of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park, and as good a job they do, it really has gone against the initial intent, which was about projects and infrastructure that the industry said was needed. So we either need to get back to the original intent of the program and what its funding was for, or we need to get rid of it altogether. One of the two, because the Great Barrier Reef, as so many people like to say, is a national asset. Why then should businesses that are in the Great Barrier Reef be the ones that are slugged with the bulk of the administration of the asset? If it's a national asset, then the nation should pay, and it should come out of the normal sort of consolidated revenue rather than as a direct tax for the industry. It might be an ambit claim to have businesses that are getting the benefit of the reef to not pay anything, but I'm putting it anyway, and I dare say that the least that can happen is a severe reduction in this charge and a reorientation of the funds that come out of this charge to actual tourism infrastructure and tourism projects within the Great Barrier Reef area. That is what it was initially designed to do. I've got the paperwork, the letters from ministers, the press releases, the reports and all the rest of it to prove that fact. But like so many other programs, they just go every which way but loose as time goes on. I'm on the record publicly, so I'll say it again right now, that we will need to keep supports in place for the tourism sector beyond September. That is quite clear to me. We're talking about a continuation of JobKeeper, continuation of cash flow for business supports. We're probably talking about a replenishment of the COVID-19 Relief and Recovery Fund in order to continue to allow businesses and sectors to apply for relief for things like rates and insurance and all the other charges they go through. There'll need to be a bit of leaning by the government on the banks to continue supporting businesses that are not back to normal as a result of this pandemic, and certainly in the tourism sector they will not be back to normal. There are businesses in the tourism sector, particularly in the Whitsundays, that are completely and utterly geared towards the international market. They don't get much domestic clientele, and it'll be very difficult, if not impossible, for them to re-gear themselves to the domestic market. The domestic market, we could say, is, despite all of the best intentions, probably going to be lukewarm because their consumer confidence is low because of this pandemic. I wish it was higher, and I encourage people to holiday in the Great Barrier Reef communities, in the Whitsundays, but it's probably going to be lukewarm. And if we just simply divert all businesses, including those now that are pretty much fixed on international, into the domestic market, we could oversaturate it and lead to a situation where nobody wins in the tourism sector. So really there needs to be that absolute continuation of support. If your income has dipped or your turnover has dipped below 30%, and a lot of them will have dipped below 30% and will continue to be below 30%, not only as we open up the domestic borders, which should have happened a long time ago, that's one of the big things hampering domestic tourism at the moment, but with the international borders closed, beyond that, commercial flights not actually getting back into full swing, and beyond that even more, low consumer confidence in international travel. We really do need to wait for these things to be cleared before we let people get back to situation normal. Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. I'm very pleased this bill has supported tourism workers and tourism businesses in the Whitsundays.